Hello, and welcome back to Collection of Dads. I'm Mr. Snorlaxx. I just saw The Good Boy or Heel. Let's talk about it. So, I'm a little bit confused. It's kind of branded, don't know whether it's this country or whatever, as The Good Boy, but when you go on IMDb, this film is also called Heel. Um, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it's called. It's called one of them too. Uh, the Good Boy, let's call it for this review, is a movie starring Stephen Graham, who needs no introduction really. You all know who Stephen Graham is, and Anson Boone, or otherwise known as Eddie from Mobland. So Stephen Graham is Chris in the movie, and Anson Boone is Tommy. So I'm going to get straight into my initial thoughts. Quite frankly, I saw Stephen Graham was the main star of this movie, and I saw it based on that. I tend to watch most things he's in. I think anything that Stephen Graham's in is something I want to watch. So I kind of saw it with zero to no expectations, really. Straight off the bat, I kind of think the trailer summed the movie up completely in a 2-3 minute trailer. So let's talk about the actual movie. I just straight away, I just kind of wish it was a little bit more intense, a bit more full on. I knew it was meant to be some kind of psychological thriller with elements of horror. Essentially, I genuinely thought it was a horror film before I went after watching that trailer. So it's just the obvious things from the trailer, right? Which is captivity. But the dynamic between Chris and Tommy in the movie was brilliant, and we'll expand on that a little bit more as we talk. So the obvious themes that started to grow throughout the movie was Stockholm syndrome. Insert description. If you don't know what Stockholm syndrome is, you will now. So Stockholm syndrome is a big theme throughout the movie, as well as psychopathic tendencies and essentially severe crippling mental health. So again, this is relatively spoiler free, but the trailer kind of spoils the movie itself. So I won't be spoiling anything. I'm not going to come out and tell you what the finale is or anything like that. But yeah, it does exactly what the trailer says on the tin, essentially. So if you're in need for a sort of just below 2 hour movie starring Stephen Graham, you are going to be relatively happy. So let's talk a little bit more about the film. So you find out very quickly Stephen Graham's role in the movie, and you find out that there are two other members of his immediate family. So it's not they're not your average middle to upper class family really. It's a dad, Stephen Graham, mum, and young son, who's I believe around 10 in the movie. So they're just not, they live in a big old house in the country, it seems. So just touching on Stephen Graham, it's just, he really is a generate. Sorry, let's start again. The generationally great actor. I've not really seen him have a bad performance in any film that he's ever been in, but the actual film itself was missing something. Um, but it wasn't bad by any means. It really wasn't. I'm not here to I'm not here to completely steamroll it. It's that there are elements I loved in it, and there are elements that I just thought was a bit pointless and just unneeded, really. So I am a little bit torn on my final score. I do have a score in mind, but it's very close between two, and I'll reveal my score at the end. Don't know what's wrong with me today. Sorry. So yeah, let's for a movie that's just below 2 hours, there are a lot of gaps, which just had just filled gaps for no reason, which would have otherwise had nothing in it. Do you know? I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but it just felt like it was just putting certain bits in the film just for the sake of it. And as I mentioned earlier, there was no real build up to the tension. We kind of get straight into it, which is good in some respects, but a little bit of build up I do think is sometimes needed, and I think that's what this film needed really. Um, so I mean, what I would say is don't expect the gore fest and don't expect the torture fest. It's there's elements of torture, which is the whole basis of the film really. It's a film around captivity, conditioning, and the finale is kind of testament to that with the elements of Stockholm syndrome, which I mentioned. So even from the trailers, you know that Stephen Graham is this antagonist, um, or the bad guy, or a little bit of an outcast. But throughout the film, you do kind of sometimes feel he's a little bit pathetic, and that does shine through. And at times, I'm I'm guilty of it. I felt a little bit sorry for him, even though he's meant, even though he's meant to be horrible. And when you find out what he's done, I mean, it's in the trailers. He's chained a kid up. In layman's terms, that's not a very nice thing to do, right? But you do almost feel a bit sorry for him, and you kind of buy into Stephen Graham's or Chris his fantasy a little bit. Um, so I mean, and Tommy is again someone you probably think's a bit of a knobhead, to be honest, straight away. He is basically the character he played in Mobland. He was Eddie basically in this film as well. So the thing is that he's as much of a fuck up in this as he is in Mobland. You get that sort of vibe straight away. But you are then quickly reminded that the bad guy in this is sort of a pathetic middle-aged man, and you're almost because of Tommy's behaviour in it, you're almost rooting for Chris to sort of you know carry out the carry out more outrageous behaviour that is teased very much at the start, but it's it just doesn't pull through in the end, unfortunately. I mean, I didn't predict the ending. Really didn't predict the ending. I did like the conclusion as it really brings home and does hit home the whole conditioning and compliance themes throughout the movie. Really, it's just a show. It just fell very short of a very decent thriller, which yeah, there were just a few elements which would have made it slightly better. So I will give my score now, and then we'll summarise. But I do give it a very high 6. It was very, very close to a 7 on IMDb. 6, 7! Which will also bring a 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I was very torn with it as it did nearly creep into the 7 or the 3.5 on Letterboxd. It's not it's not to say I did not enjoy it in any sense of the word, but so 6 for me is above average. Obviously, it's above halfway. So, and Stephen Graham does bring marks up himself, just because it's again another really good performance, like most things he's in. But yeah, I will just summarise by sort of saying I just wish it was a little more tense and a little bit more volatile and a little bit more vile. That's what I was hoping for, and it just didn't really move on from the behaviour that you're shown very early on. And there was no real jeopardy at times, and it almost started way better than the middle and the subsequent ending. But as I said, I like the ending, but you'll know what I mean. It just doesn't really feel like it moves on from the start. I mean, if this was a short movie and they wrapped it up within 35 minutes, you're kind of over it after the first act of this one, really. So my summarising words are that it's very much a film about conditioning. It's about conditioning someone or complying by using fear, which only was a small portion of the film, which I really wanted them to expand on. Um, and with a small runtime, I do appreciate that they weren't able to build that conditioning element more. But if you're expecting a Reek Ramsey Bolton scenario in this, don't, because it doesn't quite hit them heights. That obviously had season after season to sort of formulate that relationship there. But yeah, I just wish it was a little bit more uncomfortable. I watch sort of films like this to feel uncomfortable and to feel a little depressed and a little bit bummed out after it. But I just took it for what it was, and as I said, within after the first sort of 35, 40 minutes, I was about over it. But yeah, so it's a 6 out of 10 on IMDb, and it's a 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd. And until next time, I've been Mr. Snorlaxx. Adios.